Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to a new series that I'm calling 25 Genre Favourites. This was inspired by a couple of commenters who suggested, after my favourite 25 films of decades, to maybe do favourite 25 films of genres. Now, I've kind of stayed away from doing genre videos before, apart from anything else. It's difficult because so many films are, feature different genres and mashups of genres, so it's very difficult to pigeonhole them. But I thought, as the people have asked for it, I will do it. So today I'm doing 25 my favourite comedies. Again, these are sort of ranked. This was actually one of the toughest lists I've done. I don't really talk about comedies that much. And very much kind of out of all the film genres, comedy is the kind of one I think that's the hardest to do. It's not going to appeal to everybody. Everybody's funny bone is completely different. Now, there will be films in here that you could argue perhaps aren't solely comedies. But again, that's why kind of pigeonholing genre for a film is sometimes a little bit difficult and treacherous. And that's kind of why I don't tend to do it. But we'll see how this goes. So, as always, there's a bit of a mix. Again, what you find funny, I might not find funny, and vice versa. So again, this gives an opportunity for you, the viewer, the wonderful viewer with your immaculate taste that you have, to give me some of your favourite comedies. And it would be interesting to see. Again, comedy is kind of hard to do well, I think. There's so many comedies, even though, as I said, you might not think something actually is a comedy. But we'll get to that. So along the lines of really stupid comedies, I'm cheating, of course, with some of these choices. But at number 25, it's Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2. Now again, these are the airplane inspired sort of comedy, the spoofs of films, in this case Top Gun for Hot Shots. I've never actually seen Top Gun all the way through, and I've not seen Top Gun Maverick at all. It's very difficult once you've seen Hot Shots to take Top Gun that seriously. And of course, Hot Shots Part 2 is Rambo Part 2, amongst other things. Charlie Sheen's finest hour. Obviously Lloyd Bridges steals the show in both these films, as the Air Force man in charge, who thinks the mission is to bomb the enemy's toast. But once he finds out it's the coast, he realises that might be a bit harder to plan. And then he plays the president in Hot Shots Part 2, and he's not really that much worse than some of the presidents America has had in the past. But again, very silly, very stupid. But I find them funny. But then I'm weird. But then in complete contrast, a film that some people might argue isn't comedy and shouldn't be classed as a comedy, Todd Solondz's Happiness, which sadly is only available on DVD, but who knows, somebody might be brave enough to put it in Blu-ray. Now again, this is black comedy, but the darkest, blackest comedy, and again, some people will find it offensive, some people won't think it's funny. But I think it's quite wonderful. Philip Seymour Hoffman has a great performance. Essentially as a stalker who phones women up and leaves obscene messages, and then kind of focuses on Lara Flynn Boyle. You've got a professor who likes children a little bit too much, and these are kind of the taboo subjects in Todd Solond's film. But it is very funny. But it depends on your view of what comedy is. But Happiness is just absolutely wonderful. At 23, we have the wonderful Tomorrow I Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea by Jindrix Polak. Again, this is a wonderful Czech new wave film from, well, not necessarily new wave, it's from 1977, and it's about some fascists that go back in time to World War II to give Hitler the atom bomb to help him win World War II. Again, some people might think that's not really subject for comedy, but this is wonderful. It's a fantastic time travel film. I've seen it about 4 times already. It's perhaps come down a little bit from my first opinion of it, but not by much. It's still absolutely wonderful. There's some great visual gags and some interesting ideas in it. But again, if you don't think World War II is the subject for comedy, or the background of World War II, I get it. It's a fair point. Number 22, a filmmaker I don't really talk about too much because I've kind of fallen out with him in the last 20 years. It's Woody Allen, and this is Broadway Danny Rose. Absolutely love this film. I think this is one of the Woody Allen films featuring Woody Allen that he's not kind of annoying. I mean, I know Woody Allen is, you either love him or hate him, but this he plays a low rent talent agent who gets involved with an over the hill singer, a kind of Tony Bennett rip-off, and he gets involved with the singer's mistress, Mia Farrow, playing a really broad New Yorker. It has one of the best gags involving helium in cinema history. It's got a great tracking shot, for those of you who don't think Woody Allen's that good with the camera. And it does actually have a heart, and it doesn't actually feature young women in the film, so you can watch it without worrying about that. Shot in black and white. It is one of my favourite Woody Allens, because he's not necessarily trying to be Bergman or Fellini in it. Next at 21 is Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles. Again, is this a western? Is it a comedy? What category do you put it in? Putting it in comedy. It is quite funny watching young people react to Blazing Saddles on YouTube, because a lot of them are just like, you can't say that, you can't do that, you can't say that, you can't show that. How did they get away with this? Yes, it was shot in the older days, but it makes fun of Western genre, it makes fun of political correctness. It's just got wonderful moments. It's still got things that I quote constantly. Mongo just pawn in Game of Life. It's just absolutely wonderful. The visual gags, the sight gags. Whenever I'm trying to put something in something, I always think of my secretary. At number 20, another Woody Allen. It's Love and Death with Diane Keaton. And again, this, along with Sleepers, probably his best of his early funny ones, where he takes on Bergman more explicitly, and Tolstoy. It's couple of my favourite moments is when he's running around the battlefield and he's asking, I wonder what it looks like to the generals, and of course we get a pan of the generals on top of the hill looking down, and it's just a bunch of sheep running around. And also it's got one of the funniest duel sequences when Woody Allen lets the guy off, and the guy says, you've given me a new lease of life. I'll go back to devote myself as I did as a child to my singing. And then it gives an example of his singing, and Woody Allen says, I know I should have shot him. Lots of fun, great music. Again, even when he's reaching for Bergman type profundity and all that wheat. Lots of fun. At number 19, again, is it a comedy? Is it not? It's the king of comedy. Probably Scorsese's third best film, something like that. And one of his films that stands up. Again, the rumour is De Niro might have directed some of it, as this was during Scorsese's heavy cocaine days, and probably heroin as well. Jerry Lewis with the performance of his career, which really shows you what most celebrities are actually like, as opposed to the persona. And the genius of De Niro's Rupert Pupkin is when we actually hear his routine, you're expecting this horrible routine, but it's just as mediocre and bland as all the other famous TV comedians. It's pretty much Michael McIntyre before his time. Next is a modern film that I just cannot shake. I don't even know how many times I've seen this. Again, a film that I shouldn't like, but I just absolutely adore it. I think it's arguably the best Hollywood mainstream film for decades. It's The Nice Guys with Shane Black, Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. It's just absolute gold. Set in the 70s, in a kind of Chandler-esque cliched investigation, but it's just so much fun. One of those films that should have got a sequel, but kind of glad that it didn't, because it probably wouldn't have been as good. As good as Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is by Shane Black as well, this one's even better in my opinion. And Keith David's in it as well, so it's not too bad. So another example of perhaps a different kind of comedy at number 17. This is David Mamet's Things Change, which is a PG David Mamet film, can you believe it? With Joe Mantegna and the wonderful Don Amici. Don Amici is a shoemaker who decides to do a favour for a mafia boss and do some prison time instead of the mafia boss because he looks a bit like him. And Joe Mantegna is the low-level hood who gets to take him to Lake Tahoe for the weekend before he goes to court and prison for a long time. It's just gentle comedy. It's not the fast-paced, bitter, sarcastic, mean-spirited dialogue that Mamet usually does. Just beautiful performances and a lovely little PG film. Next at 16, a film that's been remade and I've never seen it, from 1967, Bedazzled, by Stanley Donen, starring Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, even though this is all about Peter Cook as the devil, and he just gives such a wonderful performance. Again, some of it's a little bit dated. Again, it's kind of humour you're either going to like or not like. It's just so good. And again, it's really for Peter Cook's wonderful performance. At number 15, arguably the Coen brothers' second or third best film, behind Miller's Crossing for me. The Big Lebowski, endlessly rewatchable, endlessly quotable, Jeff Bridges' finest performance, even though he's not really performing that much because it's just himself. Another seminal John Goodman performance. Steve Buscemi doesn't really do much, but he's actually the glue, the heart that holds it all together. John Turturro in one of the best cameos ever. Julianne Moore is a rather flaky artist. It just meanders, and I know Coen Brothers film fans that love this, and other people hate it because it just meanders about, but it's just absolutely wonderful. Shot by Roger Deakins, looks beautiful, and it abides. At number 14, Monty Python's Life of Brian still has so many great points about fanaticism and religion. Obviously got into trouble when it came out, even though the people that wanted it banned kind of missed the point. It's not actually about Jesus. Jesus is clearly seen in the background and is a completely different character to Brian. Just great performances. Graham Chapman once again proving that he was a wonderful leading man, and great music as well. At number 13, a little Scottish gem, and one of the films that could have been about me, Gregory's Girl. This is actually the BFI 4K. I mean, what world do we live in that we get a 4K of Gregory's Girl? Made for peanuts in 1980, but it still stands up. It's still funny. I think it translates. It's a universal story about the awkwardness of some boys towards girls, especially at school. And again, this Gregory is a character that I've always identified with, very much like the Eddie Marsan character in Still Life. Just an absolute little gem, proving that if you have a wonderful script and good performances, you don't need a $200 million budget. Next, we're back to the silly, stupid stuff with the Naked Gun trilogy. Just Leslie Nielsen. As I've said before, when Leslie Nielsen died, the world did become a worse place. That's a scientific fact. I would say, however, this is actually the 4K steelbook of the Naked Gun. I mean, do we really need the Naked Gun in 4K? Probably not, but I got it anyway. But I will say there's a line change in this. When Frank Drebin gets bitten by the Japanese fighting fish and lets out a yowl, Ricardo Montalban's line is different than what it is in the Blu-ray, which is a classic line. So don't get rid of your Blu-ray. I mean, this 4K steelbook does have the Blu-ray as well, and I haven't actually checked whether it's the same line change, but keep your original Blu-ray because it's a different line. Again, number 11, some people might not consider this a comedy, but it kind of is. It's Dr. Strangelove. This might appear on another favourite genre list, or favourite 25 genre list. Dr. Strangelove. It could be a horror film or a war film, as well as a comedy. Just so many great performances. Again, as everybody knows, I'm not a huge George C. Scott fan, but he just gives an absolutely fantastic performance, as does Peter Sellers, playing 25 different characters. At number 10, it's The Holy Grail. Again, this always switches between Life of Brian and Holy Grail as which one's my favourite. I just kind of love the lo-fi attitude of The Holy Grail. It's got a brilliant ending, one of the greatest endings of all time. And again, just so many classic sketches, classic moments. The discussion about democracy is just absolutely wonderful. So that's The Holy Grail. Thanks, George Harrison. You can argue it's the greatest thing George Harrison ever did. At number 9, a classic that took a long time to get to Blu-ray for some reason, Howard Hawks bringing up Baby. If you haven't seen this for a while, you will actually perhaps forget how screwball this is. There is a lot of people shouting at each other, talking at the same time. It's actually quite shrill at times. You do kind of forget how chaotic it is. But it's also genius. From 1938, and there's another film from 1938 coming right up. One of the great performances by a leopard as well. Seminal. And then also from 1938, number 8 is Holiday, strangely enough starring Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant as well. I've talked about this ad nauseum. George Cukor directed, and obviously the Philadelphia Story the year after, with the same stars, adding James Stewart, is way more famous. But this is completely predictable. We've seen it 100 times, but it's pure gold. You do not care that it's predictable, because it is just two stars doing star things. Great support. Everett Sloane as always. Again at number 7, this will appear on another genre favourite list, but it's Richard Lester's How I Won the War. Obviously it's a satire of war as well, but I just love it. It's, again, this is another pitch black comedy, not everybody's cup of tea, but I've loved it since the first time I saw it 30 years ago or however it was. You could make the argument this is the greatest thing John Lennon ever did. At number 6, a film that's about to get 4K, one of the funniest films of all time, probably the top 10 greatest British films ever made, but it doesn't have one joke in it, but it's hysterical. It's With an Eye. Arrow are releasing a 4K. This is this Blu-ray DVD steelbook. Richard E. Grant's first film, he's never been better, and you could argue he's pretty much been playing a facsimile of this character his entire career. Paul McGann should have went on to bigger and better things, but never kind of did. Just one of the great scripts from Bruce Robinson. If you read Bruce Robinson's autobiography, which is wonderful, he kind of goes through the real events that inspired the stories, including running away from Italian directors that want to be more familiar with him. At number 5, again, another film that some people will find offensive, some people will just think is the most unfunny film ever made. Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster. Arguably my favourite film of the 21st century. About the future of relationships. You go to a hotel in the middle of the countryside to pair up, because you can't be single in this day and age, and if you don't pair up after 45 days or something, then you get turned into the animal of your choice, hence the title. Colin Farrell, best performance. Rachel Weisz is fantastic. John C. Reilly. Olivia Colman. It's just absolutely wonderful. It blew me away, made me laugh the first time I saw it. I've seen it about 8 or 9 times since. Absolute gold. But again, the nature of comedy, some people might watch it and just say that is dreadful. If you look at Amazon reviews, it's either like 5 stars or 1 stars. The 1-star reviews are hilarious, by the way. At number 4, again, we're back to stupid and silly, but I've always adored it, and it's good to see some people have finally come round almost 40 years after it was made. Clue, directed by Jonathan Lynn, who was one of the writers on Prime Minister and Yes Prime Minister. A bit of a different comedy, based on the board game. I just absolutely love it. Tim Curry, arguably in his best performance, even better than Frankenfurter. Maybe not. This is the Scream Factory 4K. or the Shout Factory, sorry. 4K, yes, I even got 4K of it. It does have some new extras as well in the 4K. Yeah, again, another film that I can't tell you how many times I've watched it. Again, some people love it, some people absolutely hate it. But again, that's the nature of comedy. At number 3, a director we might hear twice in the top 3. Spoiler alert. It's Ernst Lubitsch's Shop Around the Corner. This is just absolutely note perfect, word perfect, comedy gold. Remade as You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, which I've never seen. James Stewart and Margaret Sullivan in a little shop set in Budapest, as a lot of Lubitsch films are. It's got the Lubitsch cast, lots of familiar faces. It's also got the Wizard of Oz in it, Frank Morgan. It's just absolute gold. Never trust anybody who doesn't like this film, because they're probably lizard people. At number 2, it's been copied so many times, including by some of the people involved, and it's just never been the same. Again, a film that is pure perfection, but I can also see why people don't get it completely. Spinal Tap. Of course, Spinal Tap. Especially if you're into rock and metal, there's lots of moments from certain rock bands of the 70s that is lampooned. But again, the genius of Spinal Tap is, yes, these people are buffoons, but they're also lovable. So you're not just laughing, well, you're laughing at them, but you're not laughing at them in a nasty way. They're still endearing, and that's really hard to do. I recently watched The Mighty Wind, which is Christopher Guest, who did Best in Show about dog shows, did A Mighty Wind about the folk scene. And again, it's pretty much Spinal Tap in the folk scene, but there's just too many characters, so you don't care enough about them, rather than specifically just the 4 guys in Spinal Tap. And it just doesn't have that magic, but they keep going back to the well in the hope of getting that magic back. But Spinal Tap, lightning in a bottle, again, so many phrases, there's a thin line between stupid and clever. I mean, that is pure Voltairean truth. But it's not number 1. My favourite comedy of all time. Again, people might not think the subject is suitable for comedy, but it's Lubitsch again, and it's To Be or Not to Be with Jack Benny, and of course Carole Lombard, who sadly never saw this film released. She would die in a plane crash in 1942, which is one of the great cinematic tragedies that I'm still not over. A group of actors in Warsaw pretend to be Nazis to help the resistance. Mel Brooks remade it in 1983. I've never seen it, and I don't really want to. Again, this is just 99 minutes of pure perfection. Carole Lombard is absolutely luminous. Jack Benny, who I'm not a huge fan of, gets it pitch perfect as the egotistical actor who thinks everybody's heard of him, but of course they haven't. I mean, you talk about the Lubitsch touch, Lubitsch gold. Yes, he had collaborators, not in the Nazi sense, but Lubitsch just brought it all together, and it's just an absolute classic, and they certainly don't make films like that. To Be or Not to Be has been my favourite comedy for quite some time. So thanks very much for watching. As you can see, and as you obviously know, there's lots of different types of comedy. Again, there might be films in here that you don't view as comedies, or there might be films that belong in other categories. But again, that's genre for you. Some films can be like 3 different genres at once, or 4 different genres at once. So I've tried to go for ones that are as comedy, as pure as it can be. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know your favourite comedies of all time. Again, you can do 25, you can do 10, you can do 13. And hopefully you'll join me again for more genre favourites. Not quite sure what's going to be next. And thanks again for ADS and others who asked for top 25 genre lists. So this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for your support as always. Hope you're doing well, and farewell.